Today I'm going to teach you how to drop in on every transition. My system starts with curbs and banks, and we'll use the insights we gain with those to learn our drop-ins on small, medium, and large quarter pipes. So let's get to it. We're going to practice the weight shift to initiate the drop-in using a ledge or a small curb. The thing that I want you to feel is after you're set up on the ledge, ready to drop in, you can just subtly shift your weight a little bit forward and then feel gravity take over and set your weight down on your front foot. A couple of notes: avoid shifting your weight so far forward that you end up outside of your front foot. Don't lean your shoulders like you're trying to drop in. Just get a little bit of space from the ledge and let gravity pull you down over your front foot, and that's how we're gonna plant it on the ground. So when you have a skateboard, it feels exactly the same. Stand up tall on your back foot, shift your weight towards your front foot, and then feel gravity start to tip you off of the ledge, and you'll ride away clean. We're practicing this on the ledge, so honestly, you can be curious and not afraid of the drop-in. There's no risk in testing what it's like to shift your weight in a new direction and just see what happens. We're looking for very subtle changes and a very subtle weight shift, and then slowly initiating the drop-in after gravity takes over. You'll have the confidence to do that on a ledge because you won't be stressed looking at a 6 or an 8 foot transition trying to make a small change. So if you can already skate those transitions and you want to work on those really fine-tuned details, just come back to a ledge or a curb and take it real slow. And then once you have it down, bring it back to the big transition. And if you want to go back and forth between your regular drop-ins and your switch drop-ins, you can do so pretty quickly on a ledge and get really nice feedback on if they feel different or if they feel exactly the same. Obviously, our goal at the end of the day is to get the switch drop-ins and your regular drop-ins to feel exactly the same with the same amount of confidence. All right, let's think about standing on one foot versus the other. So when you're on the deck, setting up for the drop-in, you'll be on your back foot. When you're in the ramp, skating away, essentially you'll be standing over your front foot. This whole idea that you have to slam your front foot down leads us to this problem, where you slam your front foot and you're still standing on your back foot. Okay, so when someone says slam your front foot down, it doesn't just mean extend your leg out and hope for the best. That's what most people do, and I'm sure you've seen the thousands of videos online where they just can't quite get over the front truck. So you can do this without a curb, without your board, whatever. You can stand on your back foot and then stomp onto your front foot and feel how your weight shifts towards that foot and feel how you stabilize on that front leg. If you do it right, you'll feel the weight on the inside of your front foot, up the inside of your knee and maybe your hip, right? What you won't feel is that you have to try really hard just to get your front foot down. I mean, there's no reason to just be kicking at the floor or doing anything that's uncomfortable. You also won't feel this where you're going over the top and your other foot comes in the air. It's seriously as simple as just loading that front foot, letting that weight come through the inside up. When you do that with a board, do your best to get out of your own way. Don't think about your skateboard, just think about your body and put your weight over the inside of that front foot and then let whatever happens, happen. The next thing you can focus on is while you're starting to tip into that drop in. Seems like most beginners really like this feeling where they feel like they're picking up that front leg more and more and more to help them get into the ramp. To me, this leads to a lot of trouble because you're overpowering your front foot to really stomp into the ramp. And a lot of times that'll drag you far away from the ramp and it will make you want to go over the top. Right? So if you're practicing your curb drop-ins and you see yourself doing this, I'm gonna do a dramatic version just so you can see it. If it feels like this and then it stomps down, just do your best to have equal pressure on both feet throughout the tip. You can see the difference between those last two. Having equal pressure in both your feet just makes for a really nice weight shift, and it makes it easy to control just how far you go forward. Where if I hold this foot up, it's genuinely difficult to predict where weight is gonna land into the board. When you're putting your front trucks down, harder isn't automatically better, right? It's way over preached. The slam your front trucks down, break the egg, kill the spider. I've heard it put a million different ways. What's important is that we can consistently put the front trucks on the ground and we can control the amount of weight that we put it down with. So if your only skill is 6,000 pounds of pressure, that's gonna be tough as you start changing the transition sizes, or maybe you want to drop in on a bank with a very tight transition at the bottom. So we had a great question of, would it be beneficial to just push your front trucks down and then pick them back up and try and stay on the ledge? And honestly, that is the problem with all the teachings of just slam your front trucks down. Because if I stay over the deck and I just push my front trucks down, that's gonna slide my board off the ledge and I'm gonna be behind the board, right? So this is what's happening on most people's drop-ins, where you end up slipping backwards, is trying to push your front trucks down without shifting over them. So no, it's not beneficial. So let's talk about foot position, and this will carry through the rest of the skills that you're gonna learn. So in general, you want your back foot to be on the board so you can see a little bit of grip tape between your toe and the edge of the board. This would be your toes hanging off. This would be your back foot being on the board in the right spot. Where a lot of people mess up is they set up with their back foot too close to the toe side edge as they start their drop in. And what ends up happening is that when you turn your foot, your toe goes off the side. So when you're setting up, you're gonna have to put your back foot in the center of the tail, pretty much right behind these back bolts. So then, when you rotate your foot, it's on the board in the right spot. Your front foot is gonna sit anywhere over the front bolts or just showing the top two bolts. In general, when we're skating transitions, we won't set up with our front foot too low just because that gets unstable with a lot of speed. As far as the placement of your toe on the rail, your front foot has some leeway, so you can either have your toes right on the edge or show just a little bit of grip tape. We use the curb so you could feel the subtleties of the weight shift and how it automatically starts to tip you forward. You can get your reps up, both switch and regular. We're gonna use a bank to make sure you can shift your weight if you need to, and to also make sure that you're standing up on your front leg as you're pushing your front trucks to the ground. If you look at the board, we have our back bolts, we have our front bolts. I just want you to take your chest and put it over the front bolts and then load your front foot into the ground, right? In practice, that looks like this. I'm taking my chest, putting it out here, and then just keeping it over the front trucks. This drill will take you from not being able to drop in to never having to stress about getting your front trucks down ever again. I promise you, if you get your chest over your front trucks, there is no way to avoid your front wheels hitting the ground, okay? The problems you might run into on the bank, if you're shifting your weight the wrong direction, let's say too far down, or just avoiding going forward and starting to push on your front foot, your wheels are just gonna start rolling and it's not gonna wanna tip you over the front trucks. So just visualize you shifting your weight all the way over your front foot and feel your front trucks start moving down at the ground and feel the weight on the inside of your front foot, just like we practiced before. The next thing is you have to make sure you stand up on your front leg. If you just shift your weight and fall over it, this is gonna happen where you get stuck too far forward and it's gonna throw you off the front. So it's a combination where you shift your weight into it and then you stand up on your front leg. Yeah, that's it right there. I have a great drill for you to try just on flat ground. I want you to feel what it's like to push on your front foot so the tail picks up the rest of your body. You can see when I push on my front leg, my entire body rises into the air. And I can push down pretty hard and set the front trucks down nice and soft. This is that feeling of standing up tall and shifting your weight forward and letting the tail pick you up. Most likely, what you'll feel at first is something more similar to this. Yeah, you get a lot of feedback from the ramp. You can put your front trucks down nice and strong, but it's really hard to get out of that position, and that might lead you to falling too far forward. So there's two schools of thought when you're dropping in. When you are learning how to drop in, it's gonna be doing everything you can to avoid falling backwards. But once you learn it, once you can drop in, as the transitions get bigger, everyone starts to fall forward. So at first, I just want you to recognize your skill level. And if you're still stressed about falling back, yeah, shift your weight forward, load up that front leg, and feel a lot of feedback from your front trucks. That is just fine. That's great. You'll be able to stay safe on your banks, 3-foot transitions, 6-foot transitions, the mini ramp you know and love at home. But if you're looking for drills to have that fine-tuned precision control, being able to push on your front foot and feel that tail pick you up and softly set down your front trucks, this is really where we can start changing our weight placement so we can use different transitions and get more speed out. I think we should touch on the nose grab drop in just briefly because it's taught a lot. It's how a lot of people are taught how to drop in on vert. I don't hate it. I really don't mind it. When you do a nose grab and then put your front wheels down, just know that what it's doing is shifting your weight more forward towards the front trucks. And so you don't have to grab the nose to feel that. You can do that on your own and then drop in. I seriously don't mind if you prefer the nose grab. The only thing that I want you to avoid is just going down too much into the transition so you feel it start to flip you over the top to where you're worried about falling forward. It's gonna be a bigger movement to stand up tall all the way from down here. So just pay attention to that. At the end of the day, if it's comfortable for you, it's fine by me. Now that we're dropping in on small quarter pipes, our main priority is safety and consistency. This is where you can get the most reps on your drop-ins and you can make the most beneficial changes as you want to scale the size of the quarter pipe. So what we're going to do is treat it just like the bank, in the sense that our goal is to shift our weight towards our front trucks. Feel a light pressure on your front foot on the board and let it tip into the ramp so we can feel a consistent pressure on our front foot down in the quarter pipe through the transition. If it's your first time, make sure you just drill dropping in on the bank. Maybe you have someone hold your hand on the quarter pipe, just so you can feel that weight transfer onto your front foot. Once you have the confidence to do that every time, you can start making those fine-tune adjustments. So since we have the coping to balance on, we can treat it a lot more like the curb or the ledge, opposed to the bank. So we can be a lot more subtle about initiating this weight shift forward. And then once it starts, we can just be patient as our weight tips over the ramp and tips over the front foot. Now that we're dealing with a quarter pipe, and it's an actual transition, we're not just on a straight, flat bank all the way down. We can implement a pump into our drop-in. Being able to pump out of the drop-in is the real secret sauce to get a good feel for the quarter pipe and be able to transfer it to those truly massive transitions. The first thing that I want you to feel is what it's like to not pump. What is it like to lose speed as you drop in? That feedback is gonna be a lot easier to read if you're a beginner, and it's gonna be a more familiar feeling even if you have experience skating bigger transitions. So all we're gonna do is load our front foot and just stay there. Maybe continue to bend your front leg as you're going through the transition. This will kill all your speed and it most likely won't feel very comfortable. If you're dropping in like this, intentionally losing speed, you're gonna feel 2 points where the G-forces increase. The first pressure point will be as you put your front foot down on the ground, you're gonna feel all your weight into your front foot. And then if you stay bent, as you're going deeper into the flat bottom, you're gonna feel your G-forces into the ground increase again and push you into the ground and maybe feel like it's dragging you forward off the board a little bit. It's an okay feeling to have. It's not a terrible way to get comfortable with your drop-ins. On a small transition, the G-forces aren't gonna be so crazy that you can't handle it. But I want you to start recognizing what you're feeling, because it's something you're gonna want to adjust and change as you move forward. So now you can shift your weight over your front trucks. You can get your front foot down into the ground with confidence, and you can hold it and feel those extra G-forces as you go out into the flat bottom. Now, let's clean it up a little bit. Let's start applying everything we learned from the ledge, flat ground, and the bank into the small quarter pipe. So we're gonna find that feeling where you are slowly tipping off of the ledge. And then you're gonna find that feeling where you're pushing, where you're feeling a bit of pressure, some light pressure on your front foot where the tail picks you up. So you can be aggressive, but you can set your front trucks down softly. This will naturally solve most of the problems with too many G-forces late where you're losing speed, because it'll stand you up and it'll make it easier just for you to carry your momentum forward. But it leaves us one piece that we can't learn in the other places. How do we actually pump off of transitions? Pumping is a predictive action. It's not a reactive action. If you're reacting to the G-forces you feel, it's already too late. You'll just be essentially jumping for no reason. If I stay down and start losing speed and then try and pump, it doesn't do anything. And it looks kind of awkward. I know it feels terrible. And honestly, like it might be a familiar feeling to a lot of you guys watching the video, because intuitively you'd think that's what you do. Once you feel the most pressure, you start pushing back against it to pump. No, if you feel the pressure, it's already too late. You've already lost your speed. You already missed the pump. So what I want you to do is, as your front trucks are hitting the ground, I want you to start your pump so you can predict that pressure that's coming in the flat bottom, and you can get up over that spot and carry your weight out nice and smooth. So as your front trucks are touching, that's when you're initiating the pump. This is where it's gonna take a lot of skill and practice, because you're feathering all these different motions that we've been working on. Okay, you gotta get over your front truck. You gotta push into your front leg nice and soft so you can feel that tail pick you up. But you need a little bit of motion left to where you can pump through the bottom of the transition. So there's a lot of things going on. The reason we break it down into multiple steps so you can practice each thing independently until it happens automatically. I promise you won't be able to practice 5 things at once effectively. So if at any point you don't have confidence, let's say you can't tip forward off of the ledge, or you don't trust that you can get your front trucks down on the bank, or you're too scared on the quarter pipe, so you just hold your breath and slam everything in. Okay, if any of that's happening to you, you have to isolate the problem and just attack it one by one. So by the time you are working on your pump, you go, okay, I missed my pump a little bit. I want to put a little bit more pressure on my front foot. I want to feel it pick me up a little more, and I'll tip just a little slower. Oh, that felt good. For this reason, it felt bad for another. Let me make another adjustment. Basically, to put simply, just practice making the adjustments, and then once you need to make a change in your actual drop-in, you're able to make the adjustments. It's really that simple. When you're standing on top of the quarter pipe, you have all this potential energy. And when you're feeling extra pressure into your front leg, especially as you're going into the flat bottom and you start to feel yourself lose your speed and get bucked forward, you're just losing some of that energy you have, you're just losing it into the ground. I find it feels like my board slows down, my wheels start slowing down, but my body is going the same speed, and that's why it always feels like I'm getting bucked forward. Where when you're pumping, or when you're doing a neutral pump, basically your goal is to avoid losing any energy at all. Right now at this stage, we're not focused on gaining energy. We just want to transfer all of our potential energy into forward speed. So essentially, you have to predict that spot that you're gonna be losing energy into the ground and just unweight yourself, basically extend or jump up off of the ground so you can be really light as you go through that spot where otherwise you'd be getting dragged into the ground. If you want to have an aggressive pump, you want to genuinely gain speed, you can just jump harder off of the transition and really miss that spot and start to add forward speed by pushing the direction you want to go. That's like the introduction to pumping on a small transition. So since it's a small quarter pipe, you're not gonna have that much pressure into the ground. You're not gonna get that much feedback, meaning you can only pump so hard. Most beginners struggle with pumping because they're going so slow that pumping doesn't really work. A pump is always relative to the amount of speed you have. The faster you go, the harder you can pump. If you're going slower, it's natural to have bad timing because you're looking for any feedback at all so you have something to pump off of. And when you do it right, you're not going fast enough for it to really make a difference anyways. So when you're dropping in on a small quarter pipe, fine tune your senses to if you're feeling pressure, extra pressure into the ground, or if you're feeling like you can get over those spots where there's extra G-forces and where you might be losing speed. Honestly, your instincts will get better after you learn how to drop in on bigger transitions and you get more feedback from the flat bottom and you can start working on your pump. Then you can come back to the small transitions, work on your timing, and then bring it back to the bigger ones and see if it worked. It honestly takes very, very fine-tuned feel to have a sense of some extra G's or a loss of a little bit of speed. Now that you're on a medium quarter pipe, the biggest thing that's gonna change is you'll just get more feedback from the transition. So if you feel weight into the ground, if you feel like you're overloading your front foot and losing speed into the flat bottom, it's gonna start to get really dramatic and to the point where you can't ignore it anymore. Since the transition's bigger, the top of the transition will be a little bit steeper. So this means you can ease into the ramp. You can shift your weight really slightly. You can feather that pressure on your front foot and then just feel yourself start to tip. And that will be enough to get you in the ramp. Where on a bank or on the small quarter pipe, you might have to throw yourself just a little bit more forward to confirm those front wheels into the ground. On big transitions, it's just not a problem anymore. The biggest issue that people run into on the big transitions is getting feedback from the ramp early enough. Meaning, beginners tend to feel all their weight going into the ground down here. And then it's just too late and they're leaning too far forward and it's hard to get through the bottom of the transition. We want to do this drop in a way where we can feel our feet against the wall up closer to the coping. So then that pump is just nice and easy and nice and smooth. The concept that gets really important is how do we go down the transition instead of flying out over it and then going down into the flat bottom. So the biggest thing that we want to do is get really close to the coping. When you get close to the coping, you don't have to shift your weight very much because you're already very close to the ramp. A lot of beginners, or honestly a lot of seasoned vets who are just a little nervous about dropping in, tend to set up a little bit far from the ramp. Not really comfortable standing over it. Their hips sit way back, and then when it's time to go, they start chucking themselves out into the flat bottom. Yeah, you might be able to do your drop in, but you're just gonna lose all your speed into the flat bottom every time. Where to gain confidence, you can stand up over your back foot, over the coping. I can see very easily this whole zone of the ramp, just right on the bottom side of the coping, all these tiles. I can see it, I'm looking down at it, and I'm far enough out that I can go down and very easily stay close to the ramp. It's a bit counterintuitive, and I don't blame you. I don't blame you for thinking so, but one of the key tips that you can do is keep your trailing hip close to the coping on the way in. A lot of great skateboarders touch the coping, drag their fingers along the coping on the way in, but what that does is just give you instant feedback. As soon as you drop in, gives you instant feedback into the transition. Right? You don't get feedback from the transition by leaning. You don't have to go this way and then look for it back here to try to find the wall. You have to go down into that spot that you want so you can stand up from it and initiate the pump. All right, so with the board, looks like this. I am standing over this coping, right? I am not sitting back here and throwing myself super far. We're standing close to the coping. I have my eyes on where I want the pressure up against the wall, shifting out, and then just pushing down into the wall. Right here. Let's go revisit the curb and the small quarter pipe so we can practice the skills necessary. Now that we're on a medium transition, we can start this drop-in with a new motion and then combine it with everything we've learned so far. When you are setting up to drop in, you can push on your front foot just a little bit while you're still standing on the tail. And you'll feel the tail pick you up or pick up your back shoulder. This motion will naturally lend itself to shifting your body weight forward, but they are two different motions, and you can go through that process by pushing on your front foot and leveling the board out, and then shifting your weight over your front foot. The reason that this is important is because it helps you avoid overloading your front foot later down towards the flat bottom. If I just get here all the way and then stomp down, now I'm gonna have a lot of weight there. But if I slowly and lightly push on this front foot to level out the board, and then once I start tipping forward, I just wait, I can ease into the transition nice and slowly, and then go down to find the top of the quarter pipe. So what you're gonna look for, opposed to throwing all your weight over your front foot, what you're gonna look for is just tipping enough to where you can keep your weight more in the center, maybe even off of your trail hip instead of the inside of your front hip. Right? As this transition gets steeper, we're gonna have to take our center and shift it back more towards the center of the board because our risk of going too far forward just increases as the transition gets bigger. We can practice the same motion also on a small quarter pipe. I might say you won't tip in as slowly on a small quarter pipe as the medium. So just know that, but feel that board flatten out where you're pushing on your front foot and the tail picks you up. And then once you get this position and you start tipping in, just shift your weight towards the front. And what it will do, I mean, the big thing that this is gonna do is just take the distance from your front truck and put it closer to the ramp. It's gonna take your body and put it in a position where that weight shift happens a lot slower and more naturally. It will also lend you to finding the transition closer to the coping. Think about it. If you're like this and you go out, you're gonna find the transition a lot further down the ramp. Where if you just stand up a bit taller and push on that front foot and slowly ease into the ramp, now you're gonna feel it a lot more up by the coping. I just wanna touch on this really quickly and then we'll really drill it in on the large quarter pipes. It's important to feel some back foot pressure the whole time. You push on your front foot, the tail will pick you up. That's equivalent to some back foot pressure, right? And then we're just gonna hold on to that through the entire transition, where I'm feeling both feet loaded on the board through the transition, okay? You're gonna feel more weight on your front foot. It's quite terrifying to load your back foot up properly. But it's more natural on the bigger transitions. The skill is too useful to avoid. So just look for it. Don't be too hard on yourself. But if you're able to push on the front foot, feel back foot pressure, slowly tip into the ramp, find the transition close to the coping, not go over the front and not lose speed into the flat bottom, medium quarter pipes will be a breeze. What a breath of fresh air it is now to be on a quarter pipe big enough where this motion makes intuitive sense. You stand on the coping, feel that pressure on your front foot, you're loading your back foot, tail picks you up, and then it's just so, ever so slightly, tips you into the ramp. And you're able to pump off of the top of the transition. And this is everything you need when it comes to dropping in on those medium and large transitions. If you can ease into it, start slow, and have confidence not to do anything crazy, you have the strength to get through the transition into the flat bottom. Honestly, that's good for medium and large. As we move forward into those really big transitions, we're gonna talk about how to do it in an elite way where you can gain a lot of speed and really, honestly, just learn more about transitions through your drop-in. But the skills up into this point, just for a 6 foot, 8 foot ramp, if you can do that right, you can drop in on anything. Let's give one a good pump. I just want to put a quick note on dropping in off a pool coping. The biggest difference is your nose is going to sit higher, right? Just the angle of the coping is pointing up. Boom, there's the nose. So when you are first setting up over the front truck, it's going to feel like your board and your body are at a huge opposing angle. And that freaks a lot of people out. And I get it. It does feel like the transition is pretty far away. Just use the skill that we applied on the curb and on the medium transition by pushing on that front foot just a little bit to bring everything a little bit closer to the transition. It'll pick you up. Now your body and your board will be in line with each other, making it very easy to finish the drop-in after you start it. It's kind of like a two-stage drop-in. You start with stage 1, get everything lined up, and then you finish with stage 2. Now that we're on large transitions, the real skill here is just the confidence to ease into everything. You know the tools. You know how to drop in on a medium quarter pipe. If there's pool coping, you know how to change your drop-ins on curbs. So like, you have the skill set, okay? It looks scary, and I don't blame you for thinking so. You're kind of staring into the flat bottom, wondering how it's gonna work. But just know, the mechanics are exactly the same as every other drop-in. You just have to ease into it so you don't go too far. Feel your front foot, feel your back foot. Once you start tipping, just don't do anything else and stand up through the bottom of the transition. That one is genuinely fast. Let me show you something really cool. Let's just pretend for a moment that we're dropping in from right here. We're gonna get feedback from the transition, right, in about this spot. The cool thing about dropping in on massive transitions is that spot never changes. You are just barely feeling the ramp all the way from the coping. You have consistent back foot pressure, consistent front foot pressure, all the way down until right here. And then boom, the actual pump and the actual drop-in feeling is exactly the same. It's just a lot faster and a lot more pressure. So if you look at when the transition starts to flatten out, you know, when it's at about this angle, and no matter what goes on above it, that is still the same place that you can focus on. You can still do the same exact mechanics every single time. If you can figure out how to ignore this section entirely and just keep your back foot on the wall and be ready to pump off of the last 5 feet, last 6 feet, you're gonna be in great shape. All right, so let's talk about the simplest, safest way to drop in on a big transition. And honestly, you treat it like a small transition where you're moving in slow motion and you're being really strong. So all you gotta do, feel both your feet. It's very important to feel both your feet. Slowly tip in. And stand up through the bottom of the transition. If you stay down over your front foot, and I do this at the risk of falling forward, there's a lot of pressure into the flat bottom. And that's really hard to manage. So really do your work to stand up slowly but smooth through the bottom. Now that we've done our first big transition drop-in, I want to talk about how you gain the most speed you possibly can and have the strongest pump in the world. And to do that, we can actually ditch our board. So our potential energy is up here. The higher we are, the faster we will go down and then across. So if you get low on the top of the quarter pipe, you're just stealing your potential energy. You're losing speed. So we can be as tall as possible. You can stand on your toe of your back foot and feel yourself stretch up and shift out into the ramp and then throw yourself down at the top of the transition. If you get into the ramp nice and fast, you can feel pressure against the wall closer to the coping. Now you can push off of the wall and initiate that pump. Like, it's such a massive pump when you find that pressure that honestly, over the years, it has been one of my favorite parts of vert skating. Yeah, doing airs and spins and carving around balls and all this stuff is really fun. But when you find that perfect drop-in where you can grab that pressure on the wall and just let it fly, I mean, there's really no better feeling. And I say that skating for, 24, 25 years now. Seriously, it is one of the best feelings you can possibly have, and it's so repeatable, and you can practice it as much as you want. We're gonna get up, and we're gonna get over just that center of the board, maybe just inside of the front trucks. And then we're gonna throw ourselves down at this high part of the transition, and as soon as you feel your front trucks hit the ground, you're gonna start giving that positive feedback in your legs and pushing against the G's and just letting it fly across the flat bottom. Up, out, down and off. Oh, that's so cool. All right, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next one. And if you want to join our online community or pick up some Skate IQ gear, click the links in the description. Okay, I'll see you in the next video.